Hey guys. So I wanted to give some feedback on the selection and mask weekly exercises that I had you guys do. And I just wanted to point out a couple of things and things to think about when you go into doing more of these types of assignments. Um, I talked about the histogram a little bit, and I'll go into it a little bit more. I still would like you guys to be developing your eye for a lot of these adjustments, but I think sometimes we think we have to make all of these color and brightness and exposure adjustments because we can, because the options are there. But when I was going through some of these projects, and I'm just going to isolate some of these. Here's one where I found a lot of adjustment layers happening, and the image itself is pretty well balanced as it is. So I just want to go over again how and what you want to be looking for, because oftentimes, um, in pre-production, I mean, the more you can set yourself up, the less you have to do in post-production editing. And a lot of times, many images don't need anything. Sometimes it's just a simple brightness or contrast thing. But what I want to do is just kind of show you what I would do in this photo. So if I got this photo and I were to look at it, what I'll do here is I'll show you the histogram again, and I'll talk a little bit about it, and I'll show a couple of things that could be helpful. And then later on, when we do some more photo stuff, I'll go over the histogram again and get more into the channels there. But so let's go to your window and then go to your histogram, and then we'll see it pops out here. And so if I look at this image, so this histogram is showing me basically the wave of the lights and the darks, right? So all the way on the left here, these are my dark values, and we can see I don't have anything that's at the darkest value that Photoshop can output. And then on the right side here, I have all of my white values, right? And here in between, we can see this little hump right here. That's her hair most likely, and then a lot of the mid-tones are through her skin in the background. And then we have this large jump right here, which is telling me that there's a little bit of, it's not completely blown out, but if I look at this area here and parts of her shirt, that's where this large spike is happening here. So were I to adjust this image, the first thing I would do is I would add a levels adjustment, right? So I would add an adjustment here, and if we recall from the earlier examples where we talked a bit about the histogram, these sliders here on the left and the right, these are the only things I would adjust right here. So I can see that on the left-hand side where the black is, there's really no information until I get to about right here. So what I would do is I would drag the slider in a little bit just until I start getting some of that dipping. I don't want to lose any details, right? So I look at the darkest areas. For example, I'll look at her hair, right? And I would adjust the slider so I'm getting darker values, but right when I start to lose some of that texture. So here, like this would be too far because I'm losing some of those details in the hair. So I would pull that slider up just until I hit where the histogram, where the information is starting. And that's where I would leave that adjustment. And then on the right side, right, again, I wouldn't really mess with this too much. Now I could go into and perhaps an exposure layer and tweak that and play around with that, but I don't even think I would make a change here, right? So I see as I move that in, it starts to blow out quite a bit. So maybe I would just move that in a touch. And when I look at the image now, that looks pretty good. The only thing I might say is the background looks like it's maybe a little washed out. It looks pretty good. It looks pretty good, but if anything, I would maybe add to that a little bit. And I'll just show you here kind of a useful, let me move myself here. I'll just show you a useful kind of a trick you can do here. So what I would do is I would do another levels adjustment layer. And don't look at her or her blouse, her shirt or anything like that. Let's just look at this kind of washed out background. Again, it's not washed out, but let's look at this a little bit. And I'm going to adjust this slider in so I get a little bit darker values here. And I'll bring this slider down or to the left. So that's giving the background a bit more contrast. And so notice it blew out this area here, and there's a bit too much contrast on her face. But that's okay. I'm not looking at that. I'm just looking at those two, just this area here, and maybe a little bit back here. And what I'll do here is while I'm on this layer, go ahead and hit Command-I, and that's going to black that out. We're going to use a mask right here. We're going to use a layer mask, and with my brush tool set to white, right? Because I'm going to reveal now. So this layer has basically been blacked out. So if I turn that right on or off, right? But what I would do is I'm going to come in here with my brush tool, set to white, and I'm going to click, and I'm just kind of going over these areas in the background where I'm adding a bit more of that contrast, right? Make sure your softness is set there as well, so we can see in the mask right here what I'm revealing through. And if I want to change that hardness, I'll make it a bit softer, right? And I'll just get some of this area. And now when I come over here, I can turn this on or off, and we can see I affected that background, punched up a little bit, but it didn't do anything to her. So other than that, I mean, it still looks like there's a little bit more contrast interface that I would like, but that's about the extent of the adjustments I would make. This image looks pretty good. I mean, it's a little high on the light end, but again, oftentimes, let me move this again. Oftentimes, we don't really need to do too much if the image is of good quality. So that is what I wanted to share with the histogram. And when we, so there are, I mean, just to point out with the histogram again, so we have these different options here in the histogram. We could go to all channels view, and this will show us, if you're in RGB, this will show us your red, your blue, your green. And again, you can isolate each individual channel, and you can play around with those. But for the time being, let's just use the value histogram here, the darks and the lights, and make our adjustments accordingly for that, right? So again, we're looking at the dark values here on the left, the white values on the right, and I would just adjust your slider, right? So I would just adjust the sliders here on the left and the right to play with the values there, the tones. Okay, and then I wanted to just kind of point out a couple of the ones that I thought were really successful. The car and the street image gave most of you a hard time. I intentionally kind of wanted you to work on one that had some difficult shadows there to integrate that image in there. But we had a couple good ones here I wanted to just point out here. I'll move myself again. We can see obviously some of you have quite a bit of experience with Photoshop, but I thought this one was a really nice example. They went into radial blurs, and they even put on a reflection, right? The back of the window here. So really, really well done. I think that the shadow underneath the car here makes it look like it's hovering just a little bit. But there's another example that was done well here that integrates the shadow quite well. So I think kind of the combination of both of these, right? If we could get the shadow in from this one and kind of integrate that into that one, that would be really well done. Most of you did pretty well on the car and street though, but I do recognize the challenge of that, and my hope is that you would play around with layer masks a bit and try to get some of that shadow to reveal through the image, but not so much that the texture of the original image comes through. So I thought that was a good job. I kind of threw you a little curveball there. So just keep that in mind. Oftentimes your adjustment layers right? You oftentimes you don't have to do as much as you think you do, and then if you're questioning yourself and want to see what the true values are, you can always bring up that histogram, and again, we'll go more into it later. And then you can also, if I select something with the histogram up, you can select certain areas. So let's just say, you want to isolate a certain area of the photo and you want to look at the values there. So notice as I make a selection, the histogram changes. So you can isolate, if I pick out right here where this lamp is, we're going to see a huge spike on the right side, right there where it's blown out, right? So you can, again, just if you're wanting to see certain areas, you can use the histogram in certain sections only. Okay, but nice work all around, and let's work on the rest of those exercises, and the new content will be up here at the end of the week.